Victoria Police are threatening to use drones and helicopters to monitor football fans this weekend. Is that a bit much?
I'll leave that to Victoria. What matters to me is two things. One, that the case numbers are low and continue to be low. And two, that Victorians have done a magnificent job through the most difficult of times. And therefore, we're now in a position that we can progressively, safely reopen Victoria on the same basis as New South Wales. Very low case numbers, less than 7 case numbers for the 14-day rolling average, less than 3 case numbers per day for the 3-day rolling average. And that's what really matters. It gives us a chance to help Victoria return to a predominantly open environment on the same basis as New South Wales with similar case numbers.
Business is now pleading with National Cabinet on the basis of these numbers to sort out domestic travel before Christmas. The economy relies on it. Can it be done? And does it include letting more Australians come home?
So there are two different things here. Firstly, in terms of domestic borders, we do want to see a progressive reopening of those domestic borders. South Australia and New South Wales have opened up very significantly. Tasmania's coming. In South Australia and New South Wales, we've seen a 70% rebound in jobs, which is so vital for not just economic security, but health and mental health. In Queensland, where it's been a little bit slower, it's been a 40% rebound in jobs, primarily off the internal economy. So we can see the difference that interstate travel makes. Our international borders, we're bringing Australians home through increasing hotel quarantine, establishing dedicated quarantine facilities such as Howard Springs in the Northern Territory, and expanding the travel bubble with New Zealand. But we'll continue to do that so as we can bring our Australian citizens home as soon as possible.
You're a Victorian. Daniel Andrews says all the attacks on him have been political. He described you and some of your colleagues as being from Victoria, but not for Victoria. Is that true?
Look, I don't think we could be more passionately committed. And what's really agonised me is to see the mental health crisis. What we've seen is a national 14% increase in Medicare mental health services. In Victoria, it's 31%. We've seen in the last 24 hours that eating disorder presentations in Victoria for young Victorians are up 40% year on year, and that for perinatal health, mental health, so new mums in particular, but actually it also applies to dads, Victoria is up to 43% of the national caseload, whilst being 26% of the population. So the mental health impacts of a prolonged lockdown in Victoria, which was necessary, which was necessary as we came into it, are enormous. But where we can lift those restrictions for the sake of our young people, for the sake of our young parents, for the sake of our older Victorians, it's absolutely necessary to do it. That's the thing I'm passionate about, and it's about saving lives and protecting lives in a COVID-safe way. The great news is we can do it. Victoria's numbers are low, its contact tracing's improved, and therefore that gives us, and it gives all our fellow Victorians, a pathway out of this.
On top of the $5 billion the government is already spending on mental health, you've announced about $500 million worth of extra funding for mental health during this crisis alone. But how much of that money, Minister, has actually gone out the door?
Well, actually, the majority of it, because telehealth has been right at the heart of it. We've seen over 35.5 million telehealth consultations around Australia. Mental health has been the largest component of that, and that's been the largest component of the expenditure. We've just announced $100 million for the doubling of psychological services. That funding, it started on the Friday after the budget. But it had already commenced in Victoria, and I know we've seen 35,000 services over and above what would have been the case in Victoria. And we've set up, for example, the 15 head-to-help clinics in Victoria. They were done in 3 weeks, an incredible achievement. Cooperation between Victoria and the Commonwealth. And together that, I think, is a real example of delivering the services in real time.
There has been a crisis in mental health during this time, which I think has shocked many, because I don't know whether you're getting this from people you speak to as well, but the people that are affected by the mental health crisis and suicide, it's, you know, one degree of separation. Have you been hearing some of those heartbreaking stories, and has it changed your thinking about how we need to deal with mental health on the other side of this crisis?
Yes, I have, and yes, it has. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about making sure that people are able to reconnect with their families and their friends, their workplaces, that they can have the security of their employment coming back, is precisely because of the mental health challenges, precisely because we've seen a 77% increase in Victoria in beyond blue cases as opposed to the rest of the country average. So going forwards, what does it mean? This is why we've doubled the psychological services available to every Australian under Medicare. It's also why we announced $64 million in youth suicide preventative measures in the budget, on top of the very strong focus on youth suicide in last year's budget. This is it's a lifetime's work. We're never, ever, ever going to stop, and there'll be eternal vigilance. But saying to all Australians that, you know, this could be you, it could be me. It's okay not to feel okay, and therefore please reach out if you have some form of mental health crisis. Go early because it's likely to help you. But if you are in a very bad state, please seek that help. Don't sit at home alone. Don't be there in the dark of the night contemplating the worst. There are ways to help and support you.